So I want you to imagine for a second that you are the architect. And I don't mean an architect of like a suburban house or a skyscraper. I mean the architect,
Yeah.
the architect of the entire universe.
Okay, I'm picturing it. I've got the drafting table, the pencils, the, unlimited budget.
Exactly. You have absolutely unlimited power. You have unlimited resources. And most importantly for this specific thought experiment, you have unlimited goodness. You are benevolence personified.
Right.
You want to build a place for conscious beings to live and to love and to just exist. You really want to create a masterpiece.
Sounds like a great project. I mean, who wouldn't want that job?
Right. So you break ground, you spin the galaxies into existence, you lay the foundations of physics, you breathe life into the dust. But when the ribbon is cut and the first residents, us humans, move in,
Yeah.
it's not perfect.
Yeah.
In fact, if we were being totally honest, it's kind of a mess.
A mess is definitely putting it lightly.
Right. It's full of potholes. There's physical pain. There's mental anxiety. There's cruelty that just seems to serve no purpose at all. There is loss. It looks, for all intents and purposes, like a completely botched construction job.
I mean, if I hired a contractor to build a dream home and the roof leaked and the floorboards had spikes in them on day one, I'd be suing for breach of contract.
Exactly. And this is the classic stumbling block.
Yeah.
This is the philosophical wall that humanity has been banging its head against for thousands of years. We call it the problem of evil.
It is the dilemma.
Yeah, the one that has kept theologians, philosophers, and honestly just regular people awake at night since the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
If the architect is all-powerful and all good, why is there suffering?
It's the ultimate binary trap. The logic feels so airtight that it's almost suffocating.
Right.
Because if there is suffering, then either God isn't powerful enough to stop it, so he's not really all-powerful, or he doesn't care enough to stop it, so he's not really all good.
And that leads directly to the third option, which is where a lot of modern skepticism lands, right? There is no architect.
Exactly.
The potholes are there because nobody is driving the bus. It's just blind forces crashing into each other, and we are just unlucky collateral damage.
It is a pretty heavy way to start a deep dive, isn't it?
It really is.
But honestly, it's the only place to start if we want to understand the source material we are looking at today. Because we aren't just reading a light self-help book here. We are tackling a serious, heavy-hitting philosophical essay.
We are. Today we are doing a deep dive into an essay titled, "Is There a Problem of Evil?" by a really fascinating figure named Marco Pallis. It's featured in a collection called A Buddhist Spectrum.
But we should clarify right off the bat, don't let the title of that book fool you. This isn't just about Buddhism.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Marco Pallis was this incredible, super eclectic scholar who really walked between worlds. He was a mountaineer, like literally climbing the Himalayas, a musician, and a metaphysician.
He really did a bit of everything.
He did. He studied Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, really looking for what he called the universal testimony at the center of all of them. He wasn't satisfied with just one single perspective. He wanted to see the mountain from every side.
And what makes Pallis so refreshing and frankly a little intimidating is that he isn't trying to offer us a warm psychological blanket.
Yeah.
He isn't trying to say, oh, don't worry, the suffering is all part of a mysterious plan that will make total sense when you die. He is much more rigorous than that. He is looking at the mechanics of reality itself.
His mission in this essay is pretty bold. He basically argues that the question, why is there evil, is a trap. He says it's falsely set. And I love this quote from him. It really stuck with me. He says, "A question badly put does not call forth light any more than it derives from light."
That is the absolute core of it. If you ask the wrong question, you will never, ever get the right answer. You'll just spin your wheels forever. If I ask, what is the flavor of the number 7, I can spend eternity trying to answer it. But the problem isn't the number 7. The problem is my question.
Exactly. So our goal today isn't to solve the problem of evil in a way that makes us all feel warm and fuzzy. It's to see if we can reframe the question entirely. We want to see if we can look at the world through the lenses of these great traditions that Pallis synthesizes.
And just a quick disclaimer before we jump into the deep end here. We are going to be exploring some heavy theological ideas from very different religions. Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. We are reporting on Pallis's synthesis of these ideas.
Yes, very important point.
We aren't here to preach, and we aren't here to take sides on any of this. We are just here to unpack the arguments and see if they hold water logically and metaphysically.
Precisely. We are looking at the ideas. And the first idea Pallis tackles is actually about us. It's about the modern mindset and why we struggle with this question more than perhaps anyone else in history. He calls it the modern contradiction.
This part is fascinating because it acts like a mirror. Pallis argues that the modern world essentially has a split personality. We are trying to ride two horses going in opposite directions.
Okay, let's unpack that. What are the two horses?
Well, on one hand, you have the scientific materialist view. This is the view that says the universe is essentially a machine. It's governed by chance. There is no God, no architect, no intentional design. It's just blind forces, atoms banging against atoms, evolving through random mutation.
Right. The blind universe theory.
Mhm.
We are just biological accidents floating on a rock in empty space.
But then at the very same time, the modern world is completely obsessed with progress. We have this dogma of evolution, and not just biological evolution, but social evolution.
Oh, like the belief that things are naturally trending upward.
Exactly, that we are moving from simple to complex, from bad to good, towards some happy future where suffering is eventually eliminated.
Yeah, we totally assume that next year must be better than this year, that technology will somehow save us, that we are evolving into a kinder, gentler society. We look at history as this steady climb up a mountain.
But do you see the contradiction there?
I think so, because if the universe is blind chance,
Yes.
why would it care about the ability? Why would a random explosion of atoms care about human rights or happiness or comfort?
Exactly. Pallis uses a very provocative analogy here. He says, this belief in a happy future is like a carrot swinging in front of a donkey to get it to pull a cart.
The famous carrot and the stick.
But here is the critical question he poses. If the universe is truly blind, if there is no intelligence behind it, who is driving the cart? Who placed the carrot there?
Oh, that's really good, because a blind universe wouldn't know what a carrot is, let alone where to hang it to motivate a donkey.
Correct. There is zero logical reason for a blind mechanical universe to favor good over evil or pleasure over pain. Those are strictly human values. Our belief that the world should be happy, that it should be perfect, is actually a sentimental projection. It's not a scientific fact. It's a leftover religious feeling, basically the hope for a new Jerusalem that we have kept, even after we threw out the religion.
So we are stuck in this weird limbo. We don't believe in the architect anymore, but we are furious at the building for not being perfect.
Yeah.
We want the benefits of a designed universe, justice, goodness, order without the designer.
And that brings us back to the trap of the problem itself. Pallis argues that asking, why isn't the world perfect, is fundamentally impossible. It is asking for a square circle.
Okay, let's stop there and really dig into that, because square circle sounds like word games to the person who is actually suffering.
Mhm.
If I'm in pain, I don't care about geometry or logical paradoxes.
Yeah.
I just want the pain to stop.
Absolutely.
But Pallis is saying this is about the mechanics of existence.
He is. And this is probably the hardest hurdle for us to jump because we are so deeply used to thinking ethically, what is fair or unfair. Pallis wants us to leave the realm of ethics for a moment and enter the realm of metaphysics, what is actually possible.
Metaphysics.
Yeah.
The physics behind the physics.
Yes.
The rules that govern reality itself.
Right. Think about the definition of manifestation or creation. For a world to exist, it must be distinct from the absolute. In religious terms, for the world to exist, it has to be different from God.
Because if it were exactly the same as God...
It would just be God. It wouldn't be a creation. It wouldn't be a separate thing.
Okay, that makes sense. If I'm writing a story, the characters in the story can't be me. They have to be separate from me to have their own existence. If they were me, there would be no story, just me sitting in a room alone.
That's a really good way to put it. If a world were absolutely perfect, absolutely infinite, and absolutely good, it would lack nothing. It would be indistinguishable from the source. So to create anything, a universe, a planet, a person, you must give it limits. You have to draw a line and say, you are this and not that.
And limits naturally imply that something is missing.
That is the key phrase Pallis uses, the privative character of the limit.
Yeah.
To have a limit means you are deprived of what is outside that limit. You are finite. And because you are finite, you are subject to change. You are subject to time. And because you are subject to change, you are subject to friction.
And that friction is suffering.
That friction is exactly what we call evil or pain or anxiety. It is the cost of doing business. It is the necessary cost of existing as something separate from the whole.
So Pallis is saying that you can't have a created world that is also perfect in the absolute sense. It's like asking for a drawing that has no edges. If it has no edges, it's not a drawing. It's just a blank page.
That is a wonderful analogy. Think of the absolute as the blank, white, page infinite potential, perfect whiteness. But the moment you want to draw a figure, what do? You draw a line,
Right.
you create a boundary, you create an inside and an outside. That line is a limit. And that separation is the root of all evil in the metaphysical sense because it creates duality.
This leads to what was probably the biggest aha moment for me in this entire deep dive, is when Pallis talks about the Garden of Eden. Because usually we think of Eden as this perfect place that just got ruined.
Yes, the serpent, the villain of the story, right?
We all know the story. Adam and Eve are in paradise. Everything is great. But then there's this snake. And usually people ask, why did God let the snake in? Did he forget to lock the gate? Was he sleeping on the job?
As if it were a security breach or a design flaw that slipped past the building inspectors.
Right. But Pallas says something that totally flipped my perspective. He says a paradise must contain the serpent.
It sounds shocking, doesn't it? It sounds almost heretical. But follow the logic we just laid out. A paradise is still a created place. It is not God himself. It is a relative perfection, not an absolute one.
So because it's a created paradise, it has to have limits. It has edges.
And those limits imply vulnerability. They imply a potential for otherness. The serpent represents that exact potential. The serpent represents the boundary where the paradise stops being the center and starts becoming the periphery.
He calls it the difference between the paradise of the essence, which is God, and a created paradise.
Yeah.
If you didn't have if you didn't have that potential for duality and contrast, it wouldn't be a garden. It would just be God.
Precisely. Pallis writes, one cannot ask of God to will the world and at the same time to will that it be not a world. That is the key sentence.
Yeah.
A world is a whirlpool of contrasts. The Indian term for this is samsara. You cannot have light without shadow if you are in the world of form. You cannot have up without down.
So asking for a world without suffering is literally like asking for a magnet with only a North Pole. It's a physical impossibility.
Or an ocean without waves. The waves are the ocean's activity. The suffering, the friction, is the activity of existence rubbing against its own limits. To remove the limits is to remove the existence entirely.
Okay, so we've established that the problem of evil is actually just the reality of limits. But Pallas goes even deeper into this Eden story. He turns it into a masterclass on perspective. This is part 3 of our outline, the tale of two trees.
This is one of the most beautiful and subtle parts of his whole analysis. He treats the Genesis story not as history, not as a news report about two naked people 6,000 years ago, but as doctrinal symbolism.
So set the scene for us. What is the symbolism here?
You have Adam in the center of the garden. In the center stands the tree of life. This represents the axis of the universe, the direct connection to the divine. Adam participates in this unity. He is at one with everything. He doesn't see me versus you. He just sees is. He sees God in the flower, in the lion, in himself.
But then, the serpent offers him a fruit from a different tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
And what does that fruit actually offer? It offers the experience of fragmented unity. It offers the ability to see things as separate parts rather than a whole. To see me versus you, good for me versus bad for me. I like this versus I hate that.
And that's the fall. It's not just eating an apple. It's a fundamental shift in how they see reality. It's a shift in consciousness.
It is a shift from the center to the periphery. Suddenly, Adam and Eve feel otherness. They realize they are naked. Why? Because suddenly they feel separate from the world around them. They feel vulnerable. They feel exposed. They need fig leaves, which Pallis describes as the prototype of the ego, the disguise we wear to protect our separate little selves from the gaze of the other.
But here is the kicker. Pallas mentions a puzzle he had as a child. He used to wonder, why were there two trees in the middle of the garden?
It is a valid question. Why clutter the center? If the tree of life is the center, how can another tree also be in the center? Geometrically, you can only have one center.
And his conclusion is just mind-blowing. He says there was never a second tree.
This is the optical illusion of existence. Pallis argues that metaphysically there is only one reality. There is only one tree.
So the tree of life
Is the tree of knowledge. It depends entirely on how you look at it.
Okay, walk me through this. This is abstract. How can one tree be two completely different things?
Think of those optical illusions, the ones like the picture that looks like a beautiful young woman if you look at it one way, and an old hag if you look at it another.
I've seen those.
The lines on the paper haven't changed. The ink hasn't moved a millimeter. Only your focus has changed. Only your perspective.
Okay, I'm with you.
When you look at the center from the viewpoint of true knowledge, from the viewpoint of unity, You see the tree of life, you see God in everything, you see connection, you see the sap flowing through the whole garden.
But when you look at it with the serpent's eye,
When you look at it through the lens of ignorance or duality or ego, that same tree looks like the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You don't see the unity anymore. You see the opposites. You see the conflict. You see the fruit that you want to grab for yourself. You see a commodity.
that is wild. So the fall wasn't that the world changed. It's that our vision changed. We stopped seeing the life and started seeing the conflict.
Exactly. The world didn't suddenly become evil. We became capable of perceiving evil as a separate reality because we lost the sight of the unity. We fragmented the image.
This really sets the stage for how different religious traditions handle this. Because if the problem is perspective and limits, different cultures have approached that puzzle in very different ways.
Yes, and Pallis divides this roughly into the traditions of the West Christianity and Islam and the traditions of the East Hinduism and Buddhism. They have different dialects, as he calls them, but they are absolutely describing the same mountain.
Let's start with the West. Let's talk about Christianity.
So, in Christianity, you have this dilemma we started with, a good creator and a fallen world. Pallis argues that the Christian solution isn't found in a clever philosophical argument, but in a symbol, the cross itself.
We see that symbol everywhere, obviously, but what does Pallis say it actually means in this context?
Look at the shape.
Yeah.
You have the vertical beam. That represents the absolute God, perfection, the infinite. That beam stands straight up, pointing to heaven. It's the what should be.
And the horizontal beam.
That is the relative, the world, time, humanity. It stretches out across the earth. It represents the plane of existence we live in.
And they cross.
They intersect. And who is at that intersection? Christ.
Like God-man.
Right. Christian dogma says Christ is true God and true man. Pallis says this is the key to the whole thing. To be true God means absolute perfection, but to be true man means relative perfection. It means accepting the limit. It means accepting the horizontal beam.
So for Christ to be fully human, he had to suffer.
He had to. If he didn't suffer, he wouldn't be true man. He would just be a phantom. He would be God pretending to be a man, like a ghost in a costume. But the doctrine says he really suffered. That proves the reality of the limit. It proves that even God, when entering the world of limits, must submit to the laws of the limit.
So the suffering wasn't an accident. It was the absolute proof that he had truly entered the world.
Exactly. And Pallis has a bit of a critique for modern Christianity here. He feels it has become way too sentimental. He says it's like sugar without the salt.
I love the story he tells about his gardener. It really grounded this high-level theology for me.
Ah, yes. The gardener at Kalimpong.
Tell that story.
So Pallis lived in India for a while, up in the Himalayas, and he had this gardener who was, by all accounts, completely uneducated. He wasn't a scholar, he wasn't a saint, he was just a regular guy working the soil. But Pallis says this guy had better theological insight than most modern bishops.
Why? What did the gardener know that the bishops didn't?
He knew that life was hard. He knew that nature could be incredibly cruel, but he also knew that God was good. He didn't see these as contradictions. He understood the transparency of the world.
A Pharisee.
Yes. He didn't need everything to be sugary and sweet to believe in God. He understood that the world is rough, that it has salt, but that God is present through that roughness.
Pallis basically says that modern theology tries so hard to make God nice that it forgets to make him real.
It tries to charm away the evil. It tries to apologize for God. Oh, he didn't mean for this to happen. Oh, it's just a mistake. But you can't apologize for the absolute. The gardener didn't need an apology. He needed a center.
Which brings us to Islam. Because if there's one religion that definitely does not apologize for God, it's Islam.
No, indeed it does not. Islam emphasizes Tawhid, the absolute oneness of God. There is no other creator. There is no rival god of evil. There isn't a devil who has power equal to God. There is only Allah.
So that forces a pretty tough conclusion. If God is the only creator,
then God created what we call evil.
Whoa. That is blunt. That's a hard stop for a lot of people.
It is the unavoidable truth of monotheism. If you believe in one all-powerful God, you cannot say, he made the flowers, but someone else made the thorns. Pallis quotes a very powerful saying here. When the gates of paradise were opened, the gates of hell were opened at the same time.
You can't have one without the other.
Not in the relative world. To want heaven without the possibility of hell is, again, to want God without creation. It is to want the absolute. If you have a relative good, a heaven, you must have its correlative opposite. They are a pair. like left and right. You can't invent a stick with only a left end.
That is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. God created evil. It sounds almost malicious when you first hear it.
It is hard. But Islam handles this by distinguishing between God's will and his order and by focusing on the mystery of the divine plan. But the core insight is that you cannot limit God's power by saying he didn't make that part. If he didn't make it, who did? A rival. That entirely destroys monotheism.
Pallis also mentions that Islam accepts a diversity of views on this, right?
Yes, there's the saying, the variety of the interpreters is also a blessing. It acknowledges that this is a hard truth and people will understand it at different levels, but they all converge on the central idea that everything ultimately comes from the one.
So the Western traditions, Christianity and Islam, grapple really heavily with this creation event. God made the world, so God is responsible for the limits. But when we move to the East, Hinduism and Buddhism, the whole picture shifts. The problem almost entirely disappears.
It does, because they don't focus on a creation event in time. They don't have a start date for the universe in the same way the West does.
So if there's no day one, there's no original sin in the same way.
Correct. For the Eastern traditions, the world is samsara. It is the round of existence. It is a wheel.
And a wheel has no beginning, it just spins.
It is a continuous flow of cause and effect. Pallis says they bypass the problem of evil entirely because they don't expect the wheel to be anything other than a wheel. They don't expect the washing machine to be a library. They know what it is.
They don't expect the whirlpool to be a calm lake.
Exactly. They view the world as Maya. Now, this is often translated as illusion, which makes people think it's not real, like a hologram or a computer simulation. But play or magic or art is also a very good translation. The world is a display. And suffering. Suffering is just a measure of the distance from the center.
A measure of the distance. Explain that a bit more.
Think of it like a fire. If you are close to the fire, the principle, the truth, you are warm. If you are far away, you are cold. The cold isn't an evil force attacking you. The cold doesn't have an army. It's just the absence of heat. Suffering is the chill of being far from the real.
And this brings in the concept of karma. I think we often really misuse this word in the West. We think it means cosmic revenge. Like, I stole a cookie, so now I'll stub my toe. Or, that guy is rich because he was nice in a past life.
Right. Or what goes around comes around. But Pallis explains it metaphysically. It's not about punishment at all. It's about identification.
Identification with what?
With our accidents.
Accidents. That's a philosophical term, right? Not like a car crash.
Yes. In philosophy, accidents are the things about you that aren't essential to you. Your car, your job, your body, your mood, your bank account, even your personality quirks. These are accidental. They change. They come and go.
Okay. So my essence is the deep me, and my accidents are the stuff I just carry around.
Karma works because we identify with the accidents. We say, I am this job. I am this body. So when the job is lost or the body gets sick, we suffer. We suffer because we attached our identity to something that is, by definition, temporary and limited. We glued ourselves to the wheel, so when the wheel turns and hits the mud, we hit the mud.
So we built our house on the sand.
Exactly. And the Eastern traditions emphasize that the sand is always shifting. They talk about cosmic cycles.
The yugas?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. Pallis mentions that we're currently in the Iron Age, or Kali Yuga.
Which is the dense, dark one.
The most solidified, the furthest from the light. So in the Eastern view, asking, why is there so much evil right now, is like asking, why is it so dark at midnight? Because it's midnight.
Well, damn.
That's where we are in the cycle. That is the nature of the time we are currently living in.
The universe breathes. And right now, it's breathing out into the darkness.
And trying to build a permanent, happy home in samsara in the quicksand is futile. It's not just difficult, it's completely against the nature of the material. You cannot build a fortress on a wave.
This feels, man, it feels heavy. I mean, if the world is a trap, if it's a whirlpool, if it's the Iron Age, what are we supposed to do? Just give up? Should we just sit in a cave and wait for it to be over?
Not at all. That would be despair. And despair is just another form of attachment. This is where Pallis pivots to the solution, part 6 of our outline, the way home.
Because if the problem isn't an accident, but the mechanics of existence, you can't fix the world. You can't turn the whirlpool into a swimming pool.
Right.
You can't legislate away the limits of existence.
No. You cannot cure the world of being a world. So the mission changes. The goal isn't to fix the periphery. The goal is to rejoin the center.
We have to retrace Adam's steps.
In reverse. Adam went from the center to the periphery. He went from unity to duality. We must go from the periphery back to the tree of life. We must go from duality back to unity.
But there's a catch here. Pallis talks about active versus passive realization. He says we can't just go back to being innocent Adam. We can't just go back to the garden as if nothing happened.
No, you can't unknow what you know. You can't uneat the apple. Adam's innocence was passive. He was happy, but he was vulnerable because he didn't know the difference between the trees. He was like a child who is happy because they don't know that bills and taxes exist.
And we can't go back to being babies.
We have to become sages. That is active realization. The sage has passed through the world of duality. They have seen the good and the evil. They have suffered the limits. They have felt the friction. And they have returned to the center with knowledge. They have integrated the experience.
So the sage looks at the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the scary tree, and sees the tree of life.
Yes. And here's the beautiful part. Once you realize that the tree of good and evil is actually the tree of life, the serpent can no longer sting you.
Because you know what the serpent is.
You see it for what it is, a mere property of existence, a shadow. You don't fear it, and you don't fight it, you integrate it. You understand that the shadow proves the light.
Pallis uses two really powerful images to describe this state of being reintegrated, one from Buddhism and one from Christianity. Let's look at the Buddha first.
It is the traditional icon of the Buddha sitting at the base of the tree. Have you noticed his hands in those depictions?
I have seen the statues. One hand is usually touching the ground.
That is the right hand. It touches the earth. This represents the active attitude toward the world. He is calling the earth to witness. He is present. He is grounded. He isn't floating away in some cloud of bliss. He is right here, touching the soil.
And the left hand.
The left hand usually rests in his lap, palm up, holding a begging bowl. This represents the passive attitude toward heaven, perfect receptivity. He is completely open to the absolute.
So he's grounded in the world, but open to the sky.
Active and passive. He isn't running away from the world, but he isn't grasping at it either. He is the bridge between the two beams of the cross, effectively.
And the Christian example.
This is the parable of the prodigal son. You have the sinner that repenteth versus the just person that needs no repentance.
The sinner is the one who left, got messy, spent all his money, and came back. The just person is the older brother who stayed home and was good the whole time.
And who does the father celebrate? The one who returned. That is the active realization. Pallis compares it to a bird that has escaped a cage. Once it escapes and flies free, it will never be caught again. It knows what the cage is now. The just person who never left is innocent passive realization. But there is a specific, profound joy in the return of the one who is lost.
Because they chose to come back. They know the value of home now. They aren't just there because they never left. They are there because they actively want to be.
And in Christian ritual, this reintegration is the Eucharist. It is eating and drinking the divine. It is literally taking the center into yourself to become one with it. It is the reversal of the apple. Instead of eating the fruit of duality, you eat the fruit of unity.
So whether it's the Buddha under the tree or the communicant at the altar, the goal is exactly the same. To find the center in the midst of the world.
Yes. To find the tree of life right here in the middle of the Iron Age. To find the calm eye in the center of the whirlpool.
This brings us to the outro. Pallis ends with this idea of the human vocation.
He argues that being human isn't just a biological accident. It is a job description, a vocation. We have a purpose.
Human life is hard to obtain, the Buddhists say.
Which means, don't waste it. We have this rare opportunity, this specific consciousness that allows us to find the absolute. A cat can be a perfect cat, but a cat cannot ponder the absolute. We can. To ignore that, to spend our lives just chasing profane pursuits, money, status, distraction, the next dopamine hit.
Pallis says that is a tragedy.
He compares it to the Flying Dutchman,
The ghost ship from the legends.
sailing the ocean forever, buffeted by gales, never finding a port. That is what it means to live entirely in the periphery, entirely in the world of accidents without an anchor in the center. You are just drifting in the storm of samsara. You are being tossed around by every wave of circumstance.
And he says that homesickness we feel, that feeling that we're missing something, that desire for happiness, for things, is actually a misplaced desire.
It is. We think we want a new car, or a better relationship, or a perfect world, but those are just shadows. What we really want is the tree of life. We are homesick for the center. We are trying to satisfy an infinite hunger with finite snacks, and it never works.
And this is where he leaves us. With a challenge. A final, provocative thought.
He says the tree of life is standing in this room right now, just as it stood in Eden.
It didn't go anywhere. We just stop seeing it.
We're looking at it through the wrong lens. We're looking for it in the future, or in the past, or in some other place. But it is right here. The center is everywhere.
So here is the challenge for you, the listener. If the problem of evil is actually a problem of perspective, what serpent in your own life might actually be a necessary part of the landscape?
That is the real question. What difficulty, what friction, what limitation are you fighting against that might actually be the very thing that defines your existence?
But if you stopped asking, why is this happening to me? Which is the question of the victim in the periphery, and started asking, where is the center in this?
Yeah.
How would the tree change?
How would the monster turn into a shadow? How would the problem dissolve into a path?
The salt is there. It stings. We can't deny that. But so is the sugar. You just have to have the taste for it.
Is the problem of evil actually a problem? Maybe not. Maybe it's just the friction of being alive. And maybe the friction is the only way we can feel the road that leads us home.
Keep looking for the center. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.